Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is the Prostockhockeysticks VF hockey stick review. So I already did the VX, which is their low kick. We're going on to the VF here, which is their hybrid kick. The VS is their high. We're not going to do a comparison on that one. That's going to be a totally separate review. We are going to compare the VF and the OG Blue a bit because one's a mid, one's a hybrid, which I'll kind of get into a little bit. Now, the only reason I did want to bring this VS here is because both of these sticks have the Pro 9246 curve on it, or as the VF here has a Robe 9246. Well, I've always said Pro Stocks Hockey Stick has been really good for fit and finish quality type thing and making sure things are going out right. Obviously, something was missed here, and I have to call it out because that should say Pro. And you can kind of even see where like the P tried to be. Hopefully you can see that. I can see it in person. Let me try to get this on camera a little bit. There does look like it tried to have a P on there at one point. So I don't know what happened with that, but I also have a full curve review on the Pro 9246, which is the Visigris curve. I had a ton of people ask me about that, so I did a full review on that. You can see the video up there. There's also a shorter one in case you have kind of TikTok brain and you don't want to go into the full like 30-minute review. So you can check those out for that. Now, a bunch of things I'm not going to repeat on this stick because I've covered it with the VX. Like for example, the butt end plug. I'm gonna put it in here in case people don't watch that video, but just a warning, it's going to be footage from the other one. There's no point in me refilming, re-editing it. So it will be there. So if something is similar between them two, and by similar I mean identical, I will just put it back in there from before. So if you think you're seeing something you've already seen, it's probably why. Now specifically for this stick, I am going to do a comparison on this VF, which again is their hybrid, very flex type thing stick with all of these, which is a lot of sticks, but I'll have reasoning behind it. Well, actually we won't really compare it to this one right here, which was their yellow line. For Pro didn't have a hybrid or variable flex thing. They had mid kicks, which was this yellow line here, as well as it was the red line, but they had a mid kick option, which is now called the OG Blue, which is this. So I'll talk about that a bit in terms of like how that kick point plays. Now down here we have kind of the standard of the big companies in terms of mid/variable flex. We have a Nexus sync. Now I would do the tracer, but mine broke in like 10 games. Took a slap shot to it, snapped. So we'll talk about this one anyways. I didn't really feel there's a massive difference between the two in terms of shot performance, so no real loss there. This is technically a mid kick, but again, I'll talk about that because this one doesn't, I feel, really play like a mid kick. It always felt to me more of a hybrid. And we have the FT7 Pro, which in my opinion is the best shooting hybrid there is and one of the best sticks there is. And my favorite stick overall right now is the LX2 Pro, which is their hybrid kick. So I'll compare all of these in terms of the shooting aspect of this as well as like the passing type thing and performance in that sense. The one difference really though is this stick is actually a 77 flex, so you can see right there. So it is technically a lower flex. So I did really notice that, and I'll talk about it in the shooting aspect as well as the passing aspect of that stick. So first and foremost on this, to get it out of the way, huge thanks to Prostockhockeysticks, you can see him right down there, for sending me these sticks to make content on and do a review on. I honestly would have bought these eventually anyways, but huge thanks to them to sending me these on their initial batch. Unfortunately, I had a knee injury, so I couldn't play all that much from November to January, and then since then I've gotten a ton of use to them and been basically only using them and comparing them to other sticks to get an idea for feedback and further review. Now, a big thing also before I jump into this, I always see comments online talking about these sticks and what they are and stuff like that, and there's some really weird statements out there. I'll just say this, and I've made a post about this before. There are absolutely NHL players using this stick right now. I think there have been a couple people with this logo that have sneaked through in the NHL as well, but they're pretty easy to tell when NHL players are using the sticks regardless of the logo. Look on the underside, you see that stripe, and basically that's it. Kind of have a decent idea of what stick that is. Now, some names I'm going to talk about here, and I'm sure there's more. I've kind of posted about them when I see people using them, and I post on Instagram, but I'll just say it here. These have not been clarified by Prostockhockeysticks at all. They will not discuss them. I try to get confirmation, and they don't answer me for those and just ignore it. So first of all, Tage Thompson did use one of their sticks to get the hardest shot earlier in the year. I think that number has been since surpassed, but when he did it, you could see he was using a non-branded stick, and I posted about that, and I have a post about it on my website as well, so if you want to check that out, you can, and you can see pictures of him using that. Now also, let's just call it with the big elephant in the room, or the GOAT in this sense, Alexander Ovechkin used one of these sticks to break the NHL records. Now again, Prostockhockeysticks is not confirming that whatsoever, and there is no way to really check that, but you can see people selling one of these used sticks on eBay, and you take a look at it, and you take a look at what's on the underside of this stick, and you kind of get an idea of what kind of stick that is. Again, not confirmed by anyone, but put 2 and 2 together and you kind of have an idea of what that stick is. So Pro Stock Hockey Sticks has talked about their new tapers on all of their sticks, where previously they didn't really have anything crazy, and all the new ones do have new tapers, and that is also the case with the VF, which is this purple one right here. Interestingly enough, the mid kick OG blue right here, you can see how it tapers off more. Down here, it's much skinnier than what the VF is. So even that these are lined up, you can see how much thinner it gets at the blade, and then how much thicker it is up here all the way down. So it's a much more consistent shaft shape through the bottom of the blade itself compared to that original OG mid kick. When comparing it to the other branded hybrids, you can see for CCM here, it is more kind of gradual growing. So the taper starts about the same spot, but this one shortens a lot more on the VF compared to the CCM, where it's just kind of all the way through. It's very linear, where this one is pretty aggressive and then gets thicker. And it's pretty similar in terms of the jet speed and the Warrior on here, which is their Saber taper. So you can see it tapering off basically up here on the Warrior, and it is pretty linear, not super aggressive like the Pro is. So I'm hoping this holds up really well in terms of durability. I haven't heard anything about these, but if you have a VF and you've had issues, please post them in the comments, let people know, because that is very aggressive with how small that gets compared to the other sticks and compared to like their old mid. You can see there like there. So interesting that this taper is pretty different and you can really see it. And when you look at the top ones, obviously these are swapped around, but you can really see on that OG blue, the taper basically starts up here and gets thinner, where the new VF is much more consistent, and then it gets considerably thinner down there compared to these other sticks. So interesting new idea on that for taper. It's nice to see companies actually tweaking things like that. And by companies, I mean the non-big branded companies. You always see that R&D and different tech going into CCM, Warrior, Bauer, stuff like that. Generally speaking, these non-branded Pro Stock sticks, the blackouts that everyone talks about, don't really have that tech, or if they do, they just steal it completely from one of the bigger brands, because let's be real, a lot of the times those companies are like fakes. Not the case here. Interesting to see how that is done differently. Check out the links in the description as well as the pinned comment to Aycane. Click that link and use the coupon code and you'll get a discount, which helps support the channel. It gives me a kickback so I can keep making more content and doing more videos. So you're buying hockey stuff, in this case base layers or clothing, and it helps support the channel so I keep making more purchases and doing more reviews. And if you want to support the channel without buying hockey specific things or these base layers, you can always support the channel through Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel and it is greatly appreciated. For the carbon weave on this stick, it is the same as the other new models from Pro Stock Hockey Sticks. It's an 18K carbon weave, and you can see this was on the red line and it is the same thing going through there. So they're not changing that between the sticks at all. There is different like thicknesses throughout the stick, and I'll show that with the VS specifically for that review because that one is very noticeable. But this one is just standard on the rest of their line and nothing crazy going on with that. Now for shaft length overall, this is totally dependent on your flex, which I should have brought up in the VX, but I didn't. But hopefully it's very obvious when you actually order the stick because it will tell you. So because this is a 77 flex, they do not have extended length sticks. It ends up basically being a stock length to an older model hockey stick from the big companies, from like Bauer, Warrior, and previously True, because now all the companies are going bigger, so you cut them down and they're giving like 62 inches. CCM kind of started that. This is a 77 flex and it is slightly bigger, so you can see it's slightly bigger. These are lined up at the bottom. So like I said, this one is at 77. If you do go to that 85 flex, you'll basically get this much more stick on it that you'll have to cut off, because I cut off all of the other ones to match the size of this 77 flex, because I want it to be even on all of them, and obviously I didn't match it perfectly. Check their description for it. It will tell you what it is. It's pretty obvious and pretty straightforward, and you should know what you're getting beforehand. For the shaft shape and the sidewalls, I talked about this a lot on the VX because that is a rounded shaft shape, so it has rounded corners and overall pretty round shaft shape. They also have pictures which I'll overlay on their website, which are super useful. This one is a square shaft shape but with concave sidewalls and rounded corners, and you can feel and hopefully kind of see the concavity of these sidewalls. It's kind of harder to get on camera for this, but you can definitely feel your fingers going inside the walls here. It definitely doesn't feel like that fully rounded shaft shape, which was on the VX. This one feels honestly like very stereotypical variable flex hybrid kick type of stick, and it's pretty similar to that. Now, I almost wish this was more concave, but that's a personal preference thing. When you go to a stick like the LX2 Pro, this one has extremely concave sidewalls, so you can really feel your fingers going in here, and you can feel a lot more than what is on the VF. This is obviously a personal preference thing. Now, when you look at FT7 Pro, this one feels like it has flat sidewalls, to be totally honest. So the LX2 Pro is definitely on a more extreme than that, but I do like this overall shaft shape because it does give you a bit more, I think, like actual grip on it, and it has more stability. Again, personal preference thing, hand size matters for that as well, but I do like how this is another option, and it's directly in the middle between that rounded corner, rounded sidewall, and like very rounded and smaller feeling shape on this, and the very, very square shape of what is on the VS, which is totally square all around, as you can see. We are going to grab our Pro single layer palm Pro Stock glove test to do the actual test on the grip on here and the overcoating. Now, I use this stick quite a lot because it has this Zegras curve on it. I was having some issues with shooting on it, and I wanted to kind of dial it in to make sure my thoughts and comments on it. So I ended up using this stick quite a bit to make sure I was confident in my thoughts on there. So this one should have actually quite a bit of wear on it, and the grip has been holding up pretty good. Obviously, there's nothing below here for the spray, so the spray starts up here, and I'm looking through it right here, and you can see some pieces right here chipping on there and some spots right here. That's not a wear mark, that's more of just a overall finishing wasn't perfect on that case right there. But I'm looking through it, and there's really not that many chips or really like marks on this. So this one has been doing pretty good. Now, this stick is slightly disappointing in terms of grip because it doesn't have that texture that I love and that they do really good job on, but it is that excellent grip, and it is grippy when you hold it tight, but it feels solid overall. I never feel like these are too slippery. I do love it having that more texture, but this grip is really good, just like on the VX, just like on all their other sticks that they've used. I absolutely love it, and I think it's either the best or second best grip on the market behind Bauer or right next to Bauer. It is absolutely solid, and companies mentioned CCM's getting better on that, but I have to give Warrior credit too, because Warrior has gotten better on that recently too. But this grip feels absolutely fantastic and is one of my favorite, and it is just really good overall. Now, before we end on the shaft and everything, these sticks now come with this interesting butt end plug. So you can see how it says reserve, Pro, reserve. Now, this came on all of the sticks except the OG Blue, which did not have this piece on it. Now, this is supposed to give you an option to remove putting a butt end and a tape in yourself. Now, it was hollow like that. It's kind of an interesting idea. I tried to use this. I also tried to put a bit of an over grip on it as well. So I use this basically to try to wrap it around and to bring it down, so I had that grip with this piece as well. I had no problems with this coming out. This is just not my preference in terms of an actual knob. I like a bigger knob like this. I like having that piece just rest up against my hand right here for a little bit more stability. This just wasn't big enough, so it didn't really work for me. And no matter what I tried to do on this, I tried to kind of overlap this more because it wasn't big enough of a knob I wanted to. It just didn't work. This is cool if you like it, but it's annoying if you don't want it, because then you don't have an actual butt end. So there's just tape here I put over top, but as you can see, it goes in because you don't actually have a butt end because it didn't come with one. Nitpick, but you can't make this an option to be like, oh yeah, I want this or this. It's too much overhead for each stick. I would prefer just have a normal butt end, but I like them trying something different on here. I really like this idea. It just didn't work out for me. Obviously, I talked about graphics and aesthetics on the VX, and it is really no different on this model. There are some slight differences which I will cover, and one of them being that this color on the bottom is white versus the kind of silvery color on the VX, which isn't a big deal. The other part I want to call out is, again, I talked about it on the previous one, is this kind of transition point right here and the taper and where the blade meets with the actual shaft itself. I talked about this in the past. So this is spray painted, so you can't see that connection point, what you could see on the old yellow lines, which I absolutely loved, but people really hate seeing that and they think it means that there's a break on it. I'm sure if someone got this stick today, they would post on Reddit, is my stick cracked? Look, there's a crack. No, it's just a seam from the actual manufacturing, and it's totally fine, but people don't understand that and they hate that. So we get all these companies now spray painting this join just so people can't see the actual manufacturing behind it. Now, I talked about on the red line on how this wasn't very uniform on here and it was pretty disappointing. This is actually pretty good, and you can't really feel any issues on here. This one's pretty uniform all around. Now, there is still one spot, which is right here, and hopefully this is coming off on camera, but it does feel like this has a little bit of a bump to it, and it's very minor, but it is still there, and I want to call that out. I'm calling out all these manufacturing pieces on sticks just because when you look at ones with True that look absolutely horrible, and you just want to see how all the companies are doing it. So there is a slight bump here, but it is totally fine, and it's much better finish than what is on True which isn't saying much. But now going on to the most important part is the graphics. Now, obviously the purple is kind of this look on this, and this little purple color is absolutely fantastic. I don't know if you would consider this like a chrome purple or what, but it looks so good. This is my favorite one of the sticks. Just that color looks absolutely fantastic in the light, and just look at it through it, especially when it actually has the coating too. I find it even works even better on the grip sections versus the bottom sections here. I don't know what it is, but just having that little bit of gloss just adds a bit to it. I love the colors on this. It looks absolutely fantastic. It's obviously extremely understated. There's literally one logo. It's all black and then purple on the underside. When you get to the top part too, it does have this really nice detail of the question mark P up there, as well as having the flex on here and the flex profile, which is the variable, and again the really nice color on the actual curve model as well, but this one's a special one with the row without the P. I love the color of this. It's super understated. It looks great. Now I do love a little detail that someone pointed out that I totally missed. That little dash for unprofessional is hilarious, and great job on them for that, and I can't believe I didn't see that before. So huge props to the person in the comments who said that. You know what they are. You basically just look for a color at the bottom of these sticks and you have an idea what they are. So it's very smart on their end in terms of doing something that is instantly noticeable, as well as being unique and adding their P logo there. Now onto blade construction. It is the same as the VX. It has that textured finish on here, but it doesn't look anything like the textured finishes on other sticks. So on the CCM, you can see it, you can feel it a lot as well. That is the press finishing construction method basically of these blades. That is the result of the carbon fiber. It is slightly on it. You can see some of that hopefully on camera. I can feel it. Hopefully it comes off hearing it a bit, and there's a bit of texture there, but it's nothing what is like on CCM, Bauer, and Warrior. Nice finish, but it isn't quite up to what those other ones are in terms of grip and everything. With the other companies, they do have more texture there, and it just feels like it's a little bit more higher quality than what is on the Prostockhockeysticks one. So for blade feel, I already screwed this up on the VX, which I put a correction on. So instead of me re-talking about this, I am just going to put that correction part in here, talk about the blade feel on that, so you get an idea of what this is compared to other sticks, how it compares to like the FT7 Pro and like the LX2 Pro. And I want to clarify something on here because I brought out the VF yesterday from filming this video and did a direct comparison to the FT7 Pro when I was like actually skating and playing, and something I noticed differently on here and something I sort of forgot, and I don't think they actually have the tech on here anymore in terms of like showing what it is. CCM has changed their blades on here for a while to make it more dampened when puck handling, and then it gets pingier and it feels more pingy when shooting. It really does work, and I noticed when I did my testing in the basement for that video, I was wrong. Now yesterday on the ice, I took the VF and I did hard passes side by side with my producer compared to the VF and the FT7 Pro, and the VF does honestly feel more dampened than what the FT7 Pro does on those hard passes. For stick handling, I would say they're pretty similar to each other, but that is going to translate down to the VX as well because they are all the same blade makeup. The FT7 Pro is a weird blade where it goes softer when you're stick handling and then it tries to get harder when you're actually shooting. That's the whole purpose of that blade, to kind of change puck feel. So these ones are slightly more dampened than the FT7 Pro is when shooting and making hard passes. Everything on the LX2 Pro compared to these though, it feels pretty similar. These aren't super stiff or dampened blades, but the FT7 Pro plays like a much pingier blade when making really hard passes and shooting. For weight on this stick, the stick comes in at 393 grams. It's advertised at the max of 390 grams. So it is basically right there. There obviously is a manufacturing tolerance piece between them where everything won't be the exact same. Now, with all my other sticks from this batch, I did have to cut off a bunch like this. So you'd have to subtract the weight of stuff like that from that weight that I took on the scale. But really, the stick wasn't cut down. So if you want to go the true method where they say you have to take the butt end out to get the real weight, we take the butt end that was on it and we subtract 5 grams from that 393 and you get under 390, which is fine and it weighs pretty good. This is also not a crazy low weight. The VX is a lower weight than this is. That's what Prostockhockeysticks advertises. This weight is totally fine. A lot of people keep seeing numbers and they're like, oh, I need a lighter stick. I need a lighter stick. It's just the balance point that is the important part. And this is very well balanced, which again, I'll talk about. So stop chasing numbers. Numbers aren't everything. It's one of the most asked questions I get of how much this weigh? How much is this weigh? And the 20 grams on your shoulder pads isn't going to make a difference. Stop worrying about numbers like that. Balance is more important and overall feel of the stick. I talked about the weight on the actual scale of this and how it's not the most ridiculously light stick in the world, but also that it was very well balanced. So I can't remember the exact numbers on this. I'll try to put it up on the screen of what I weighed it to. When I put these side by side, they feel pretty similar into each other. I will say the Prostockhockeysticks VF feels lighter than what this LX2 Pro does. If the grams are close, it's a balance point thing. It's also where I talked about how much I hated the sink, because the sink took away a lot of the weight on the blade, moved it up the shaft, or at least just removed weight on the blade, so it felt really blade light. Weight is all about balance, but this felt really, really good, and I loved actually using it as a defenseman, and I found that it was better than the VX, specifically trying to do the long plays with my stick, so pulling pucks away, pushing pucks. I felt like this stayed on the ground more than it had on the VX, and more than like some other poorly weighed and balanced stick like QR6 Pro. I feel this one feels better than that when I'm using it. And there was very few times where I would try to do something with this as a defenseman, whether it be pull a puck from someone's stick or from their feet, or kind of slap at a puck or pull a puck behind me and grab it type thing. Again, I might prefer a bit more weight, like the LX2 Pro feels a little bit heavier. This is solid all around. And I also noticed that for stick handling as well for weight, everything on it, the blade, I know where it's going to be. It doesn't bounce up. It feels very stable. What I really love about the balance, again, a ton of sticks where the blades are very light. I stick handle and it feels like the blade's going like this, and it feels like people can tap your stick up a lot. With this, it felt controlled and it feels like it's down there really solid. So for sauce passing on this, I talk about it a lot in the 92-46 Zegras curve review video. It does affect this a bit. The blade shape is very similar to a 92, but I do find when I'm trying to do sauce passes, it doesn't feel exactly the same as the 92 does. It's just slightly different as well. You can use the toe to kind of do that as well if you want to use the toe more like a 28. But for my heel passes, it's pretty good. I just feel more confident in the 92 when I'm using it and everything. That doesn't mean that this stick specifically is worse for it. It's just the curve. And again, this is always a preference thing. But these curves are the same shape on the OG Blue versus the VX versus this. So me doing this, it's all about the curve, and I still think Prostockhockeysticks is one of the best blade shapes and heel thickness and heels to be able to sauce, because doing that is super easy and feels really good. And the only real stick I feel is better than what this is are Bauers, which have been a king for this for a while, which I find just saucing with these things are like the next level and still the best. And it's one of the things that makes me kind of like Bauer sticks a bit, is just their blade construction in terms of the shape of it and everything, because sauce passing with this is just absolutely ridiculous. It's not a huge gap between this and the Jet Speed and the LX2 Pro and these Prostockhockeysticks one. It's just Bauer's slightly better, and really you could be totally fine with any of them. This curve doesn't help me all that much, even though it is a pretty similar shape. I just feel I'm more comfortable with that 92. And because of this curve, I sometimes find if I'm going to sauce and I get a little bit more in the middle of the blade than I prefer, the toe kind of kicks it out a bit and makes it a bit more controllable for me. But again, I talk about that all in that review of that curve. So watch that one if you want more details on it. For the blade construction, it's fantastic, and it's probably the second best I've used besides those Bauers. Now for passing from like hard type shot pass that are long passing, multiple lines type thing, trying to control hard passes from my own end to the other blue line or to the red line, and doing hard breakout passes. This is a 77 flex, and honestly, it didn't really bother me all that much. I definitely noticed it was a 77 just because sometimes I just felt like it would kick a bit more than I was expecting it to, but it wasn't bad. And I found this stick was much easier to make those passes with than the VX, and it was a lot more consistent. I find that a lot with mids and hybrids. They're super easy to just bring a pass out, make it really hard, and it doesn't float too high, and it also doesn't turn into a shot type thing. This did a very good job with that. Even though it was a 77, it was still manageable and it still felt totally fine for me. I had an 80 trigger, and that 80 to 85 felt a huge difference, and I hated the 80. This 77 was totally usable. It's not the end of the world. It wasn't my preference, but it was manageable, and I was pretty easy to adapt to it, and I got used to it. There are still times when I would make passes though, and it would go up a bit more. The curve definitely doesn't help with that, but there are times where I would make a hard pass when playing and people were on me, so I had to do it really quick, and it would be a little harder than I wanted to because it just kicked a bit more than I was expecting. That's the 77 versus the 87. It always will happen that way. I would have preferred an 87, but this is what I got, and it wasn't that bad. I always find hybrids are very good for this, and it will continue to do so. It makes it more manageable. You kind of know how the stick is going to kick everywhere when your hands are. You get used to it. Where lows, I still feel like kind of kick out a bit more. This being a hybrid, plays like a hybrid. It makes it easy to get more of a kick than what the OG Blue does, because it's just kind of a normal mid kick. So you can really put less effort into those passes. You just have to get used to it. But passing on this was really solid, and I very much enjoyed it. Curve and the flex were a bit detriments to it, but that's not the actual stick itself. So this part is all about the flex profile and the flex itself of the stick, which that one's weighted 77. A lot of people ask, does it play real to flex? And one caveat of that is, especially for a retail stick, you have a variance of about plus or minus 10 stated flex. If you go to a retail store and you pick up an 85 flex CCM, it might be a 75, it might be 95. Those people that went into the store and kind of flex sticks, there is some merit to that, and you can see pros doing it as well. And every stick, while they do manufacturing, they try to do a tolerance to them. There are manufacturing tolerances with everything. You can't get everything absolutely perfect every time, so there is a bit of a difference. I have noticed recently, basically every company has been pretty on spot for flex ratings. Maybe I'm getting really lucky and just getting ones that are really close to everything. These feel what I expect. It's a 77, but it's not too bad of a 77, but it does kick more than I would expect. And it doesn't really have like that load ability I find that I get in an 85, which I'll talk about for the shooting part. But the other part about this is all about the actual flex profile. Hybrids allow your hands to go in a bunch of different spots, and the stick flexes in a bunch of different spots, so it basically has flexibility across the whole sticks. Previously, I think Bauer advertised these as like it would be a consistent flex up and down. CCM says there's very flex points, so like one here, so hybrid as in it's a low, it's a mid type thing. Companies do this all the time. According to Prostockhockeysticks, their hybrid can flex in different spots based where your hand is, which makes sense. You put your hand and then flex. This is a mid kick, which is supposed to flex up here. Then they have the highs, which are higher up, or mids flex like somewhere here. There is a big difference between how this stick shoots and kicks compared to the VF. This is the OG Blue. I find hands up high, it doesn't kick all that great, and it's fine, it's consistent, but it doesn't really do a lot for you. When you're down a bit lower, that's where you want it to go. You can really feel the stick actually kick when your hands are down more and you put real weight on it. And when you go even lower, you can still feel that kick like basically right here. I don't have problems with these mids. I find them pretty easy to use and it's consistent. The marketing for stuff and the advertising makes it kind of confusing on sticks on, okay, what is it really gonna do? Like, I'll talk about the Nexus in a second, but for this one, that feels very different than what if I went to that VF and used the VF. When we get to Bauer, I've always found Bauer's Nexus line to be pretty variable flex. They always called it their mid, but then the Supremes were highs, not mids. Was like you could do that and it kicks pretty well and it feels like it's totally fine. And then that as well kicks pretty well, feels totally, and then even lower, kicks pretty well, feels totally fine. I always found the Nexus to be more of that hybrid variable flex type thing than this true mid, because it didn't really require you to be very specific with your hand position, which some mids do. And this one just feels like it's easier to load on all spots compared to that OG Blue. And I always really liked a jet speed because you could basically do that and it kicks, and you can also put your hands really low and it still fires off really hard. While it's not as easy to release as a low kick, you can release it all over and it shoots very easily and pretty well from everywhere. This is a very good hybrid. Same with the LX2 Pro, where it's kind of all over the place, where you can put force on and the stick kicks. It felt very similar to what this stick is. So higher, kicks very well. Get lower, kicks very well. This plays very differently than that OG Blue. So this is a case where their mids for Prostockhockeysticks really play as a mid and is very different than I always think the Nexus is kind of that hybrid type feeling. And again, middle kicks very well. Again, with this shooting and with this kick, big thing on here is the 77 really does play like a 77. The thing I notice a lot is one passing. But when shooting, when I go to a stick that's too flexible for my preference, not that I'm a super strong, really powerful person, but I noticed like on that last one, it feels like the stick almost lags behind where I put force in it and it kicks back, but it doesn't kick back with the force I expect. When you have to put more force on a more higher flex stick, it feels like that force comes back harder. So when I really lean into this, it doesn't really feel like it really flies and really kicks back as much as one of those other sticks does. Going from that stick to this 85 flex from Prostockhockeysticks, and when I really lean into it, it does feel like it comes back as how I'd expect. And it does feel like it has that kind of kick. There are times when I'm using this where it does feel more like where the shot comes off and everything just comes in perfectly and it feels exactly how I'd expect to stick to. And it doesn't really feel like I'm losing anything in the 77. More often than not, when I do make a shot, it does just feel like it is 77 and it feels like it takes less effort to flex it. And it feels like I don't get as much out of it compared to those other sticks. So I think this flex rating is very true, and I think the hybrid on here is definitely a different kick point than what's on the OG Blue, which is a real mid. This one, it really is pretty dynamic and where you can kind of place your hand and where the stick will work. So it works very well for that and makes it a very good competitor to that JetSpeed LX2 Pro, and I'm gonna say Nexus as well stick, especially for the price point now. And you want to support the channel and you need a base layer and a protective, kind of supportive base layer that helps protect your growing as well as your hips. Check out the Cortec. This is the Pro 1.0 pant, so this one is not quite as restrictive, and this is kind of tight right here in this X pattern. You might have seen these as Under Armour before or Bauer for the hockey specific ones. There's also the Core 3.0, which is a lot stiffer, as you can see. Really helps protect my growing and keeping it kind of in place and make sure it doesn't overstretch itself. There's a discount code, and you click the link in the description. Use that discount code to get a discount off, help support myself, as well as get you some pretty awesome base layer pants that really do help with injury prevention and help stabilize your core while playing. So now we get on to overall shooting. When I take the OG Blue and this VF next to each other, the VF definitely does feel like it is a better performing stick. It kicks better, even though I'm talking about that flex where I notice that flex being like a 77 and kind of lagging a bit and not being as much whipped back as I expect when putting into a stiffer stick. The OG Blue doesn't really ever blow me away on shots. It would have to be like the absolutely perfect shot to make me like, oh wow, that's great. Where this one, while it doesn't necessarily blow me away, I'm much more satisfied with the results of it. And if I had an 85, I know I'd be even happier. Because I can tell when that stick is giving in more when I put pressure on it and try to like shoot it than I kind of want. There's definitely pros and cons to a lighter flex stick or a lower flex stick, and I tell a lot of people to go into those type of sticks. But for me, like 85 flex works perfectly for my game, where far long passes where I can't have the shot pass to turn into a real shot, so it's maintainable, as well as keeping pucks down from the point, as well as I just want to really be able to control that like release and everything more, which I find is more manageable with the 85 flex versus 77. As overall kicks, this one definitely kicks better than what this one does when it really comes off. But the big thing about these sticks, and I'm gonna even say against the Sink, I find these sticks shoot kind of comparable to the Sink. The Sink doesn't really ever blow me away when I shoot it, and it was kind of my thing where I think the Geo was almost better. Compared to an LX2 Pro and FT7 Pro, which I've been taking this VF against a bunch, I would take the VF at first, take a couple shots, but okay, it feels good, and then I would come out with this and go, and I was just like, and it would just be, okay, that's what I can do with my shot. It is just that level higher, and this stick, I played with it a few days ago. I brought that VF and I brought the LX2 Pro, which currently is my favorite overall stick. And I had a couple chips with the VF, and then I had a couple shots from the point with it. It's like, okay. And then I had one of these, I just went, and it was an absolute cannon. I had zero effort into it, and I'm just like, oh, that's what I can shoot like. Cool, I like that. Same thing with the FT7 Pro. That stick wows me when shooting, especially compared to the VF. That's kind of what these have been like for a while now, and I've said that on the kind of the original ones on these, and I'm gonna say it again. I do think these are a solid upgrade in shooting over the OG Reds and the OG Blues, especially having new tapers, little kick points on them. This does shoot very differently than that OG Blue. They don't really compare all that much, and I'm more impressed with this shot than I am with the OG Blue. It's that price part that you have to talk about. This is a solid stick overall, especially for the price, but when I'm on here and I'm taking a shot like that, it just felt like an okay shot. It didn't blow me away, and that one felt a little bit better. But again, it was kind of like, I know I can shoot better than that, and I know I'm used to shooting better than that, and I do feel I am leaving a little bit on the table compared to if I grab this stick and just go like that, and yes, that went higher, that hit the crossbar, and that made a lot more noise. But that's not even the impressive part for me to it. It's just how that release comes off so easily, and it comes off like it feels like I can just blow pucks by goalies easier and just release harder, faster, quicker than with these than I can with the VF. But again, that's been the whole thing with Pro Stock Hockey Sticks. And I'm not saying you can't get a great shot off. This whole thing really feels like, I talk about this again and again, game improvement irons versus player distance irons versus like blades. Those Pro Stock Hockey Sticks, especially the high kick ones and like the ones that are being used in the NHL by McKinnon and Ovechkin, they're blades. If you can shoot a puck, you're gonna fly, which I'm not a scratch golfer, I'm not a pro, so I need all the help I can get, and these release so much easier. That's a big difference between these and the shooting. The shooting's good, especially for the price point, but it's not a $440 stick comparable. You got to figure out if that's enough for you. Now, the real question on this stick is, can I recommend it? This stick now comes in at $250-ish Canadian and is completely a bargain compared to current CCM sticks, which I think the FT8 Pro is now $440 or something absolutely ridiculous, and sticks are getting more and more expensive. When I put this stick up against the FT7 Pro and my favorite, the LX2 Pro, do I recommend it against that in a performance standpoint? I would just honestly take the LX2 Pro or the FT7 Pro in terms of shooting. On it, balance, they're all pretty good on there. I prefer the LX2 Pro a little bit more. I find it a bit more blade heavy. That's obviously a total personal preference thing. Pure performance from shooting and everything, it's not up to these, which are now $400 sticks. This is a $250 stick. Now, the hard part about this recommendation is this Pro Blue Line, OG Blue, which is $150 Canadian, is $100 less than this hybrid one. Now, shooting on these two is very different, which I talked about, and performance on them is slightly different. I'm going to say the VF performs better than the OG Blue. Now, I've never had problems with these mid kick, but it is a variable flex. It is a hybrid kick point. You can shoot it from more places. It's easier to release than this one is. That makes it tough. $100 difference between these two. I think it really depends on what you are looking for specifically. If you want that like complete hybrid stick with lower weights, this being the 393 versus this one being like the 410s-ish. Yes, it's not a huge difference. Personally, if I was buying a stick tomorrow, I'm buying this Blue Line. $150 is just a stupidly good price on that, and I don't think the performance benefits of the VF is really, like, to me, worth that $100. Now, when you compare this $250 compared to a $440 FT8 Pro, whatever the above $400 price is, there's no way I'm ever saying buy the CCM. Just ridiculous for pricing now, and this one is obviously my recommendation in that sense. So it really depends on what your kind of performance per dollar check is on that and what you're really looking for. I'd still pick the LX2 Pro off of any of these off a shelf if I have a choice, but the price difference, I'm not dropping $400 for an LX. I don't know what the LX3 Pro is yet. I haven't seen it. I'm not dropping $400 and something on that versus these ones. These are much better value, easier to recommend. While you might not get the high top shot performance, they're solid and totally worth it for the price. So hopefully this video was helpful. Thank you very much for watching this video. If this was helpful and you end up buying a Pro Stock Hockey Sticks because of the comments in this video, please let Pro know. I don't get paid for that or anything. I don't have an affiliate link. I don't care about that. Just let them know that this content is helpful. So in the future, I can hopefully keep doing them and do more reviews on their stuff down the line. I will be reviewing the custom ones I talked about. I know I'm late. I'm sorry. I'm awful. It'll be coming down the line. The VS is also coming down shortly as well. If any of my videos are helpful making make any purchases like from CCM or Warrior, please let them know on social media. Let them know Hockey Reviews content is helpful and you want to see me do more reviews of their product. Hopefully gets me on their radar so I can keep content and do more reviews of different sticks. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to subscribe to YouTube, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description. Check out the links in the description as well as the pinned comment to Aycane. Click that link and use the coupon code and you'll get a discount, which helps support the channel, gives me a kickback so I can keep making more content and doing more videos. So you're buying hockey stuff, in this case, base layers or clothing, and it helps support the channel so I keep making more purchases and doing more reviews. And if you want to support the channel without buying hockey specific things or these base layers, you can always support the channel through Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel and it is greatly appreciated.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.